Well, howdy, Nick. How's it going? I'm so glad
Hey,
to
Paul.
finally be here on the show with you. We've been planning this for a little while, but yeah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. We were talking before, and I really appreciate the opportunity and hope I can give back as much
Oh,
as your
I
other
I have
guests. So,
no doubt whatsoever you will in spades. So this is going to be a different kind of conversation because you are pretty new in your shop. Mostly I interview, shop owners that have had their shops for 10, 20, 30 years or more kind of thing. But I'd love to start by you sharing your story with how you got interested in machining in the first place,
sure.
how you decided to start a shop, just what the last few years have looked like for you.
Yeah, so I would actually like to go a little further back because it's all really entwined for me. How I actually started the shop and got interested in machining. Um, and so
Yeah.
my name is Nick, and I started the shop in 2018.
And tell
Um,
us the shop name.
Preece Machining and Assembly.
Okay. And where are you
Um, so,
located?
and we're in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
Um,
Awesome.
and basically, prior to that, I had never stepped foot really in a machine shop before my own. And so, basically, right out of high school, I was a tradesman, started installing windows, started doing trim. And one kind of interesting thing is everybody that I worked for was self employed. Like I never
Mm,
worked for a big company, and so I kind of got this idea in my head that that's just what you do is you just start a business, get an
right.
LLC, get some insurance, and you're in business.
Yeah.
um, so that's kind of how that started. But finding out about machining as a tradesman, I was like super into tools and just started YouTubing it and found a
Okay.
guy who was taking apart a drill, and then he had a Bridgeport, and I remember just being like mind blown that he's just shredding this material and it's the chips are flying. And I had to find out more about this, and so I started my like YouTube spiral a little bit and found guys like NYC, CNC, and
Sure.
John Saunders, and then it sparked an interest for me to go back to school. And so about
Awesome.
when I was 20, I went back to college and went to community college and got all my classes done that you can get done at community college, and
Hmm.
kind of convinced myself that I wouldn't get accepted to university. I was going to do a engineering, electrical engineering, and kind of thought, well, this is as far as I can go. I didn't really realize that transferring is super common. Doesn't matter how bad of a student you were in high school, that you do well
Right.
in community college, you can transfer right to university, no problem.
Yeah.
But I thought there's just no way I'm going to get accepted and there's nothing left for me to do at community college. Like I've taken all the
Mm,
classes.
got it.
And so that summer, basically was buying tools at estate sales, machinist tools, and bought my first little mill and put it in my mom's garage. And it was a shop task. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
I'm not familiar.
They're like super hobbyist. Basically, they've got a mill head and then a lathe all in one machine, and then
Oh,
the
yeah. Sure.
something like that. And then basically decided I'm not getting accepted to university, so I'm just going to go for it and start my own engineering company. Basically,
And what age are you at this point?
I am 22, just about to
22.
turn 23.
Okay.
And so I found some really old stuff and a really niche spot. And this spot is niche because basically it's really hard to rent. And so the
Hmm.
rent's super cheap. You had to, when we first started, you had to go through one or two other businesses just to get to our front door.
Okay.
Like you had to go through their garage.
Sure.
And so it was like, all right, I'm going to try this for 6 months.
Right.
And that's essentially how it started. I bought a Miltronics. I
Okay.
think it was a VMC 16
Okay.
and a bed lathe or an engine lathe, and
Hmm.
was planning on just taking on engineering projects. And then I started doing a lot of machining. Uh,
How did you start getting the work?
so I thought it'd be a lot. So I had an LLC when I was doing trim, like I was doing handyman, and basically work would just like flood to me. I'd put a post out on Nextdoor or Facebook, and people would be like, "Hey, I need you to come fix my fence. I need you to come fix my door." Just a ton of work, and I was expecting the same, and that's not what happened. What happened was
Because
basically
it's
the
not the
only people.
general public that needs machining; it's businesses that need
Well,
machining,
well,
right?
and at first we weren't selling machining; we were selling like R&D services,
Oh, okay.
and
Still
so we were
not the general
just
public.
and it was to the general public, and then we quickly found out that like this isn't going to work out well because I remember this one project. It was like the biggest project we had at the beginning. They gave me like $10,000 to try to focus on a project, and then we did it all, and it turns out there was just no way it was going to work with their form and function, and it was kind of crushing to kind of be like, yeah, you're going to have
Mm,
to change your life's goal, your dream to
right.
actually do, you know what I mean? And then they don't have
Sure.
enough money to actually bring it to market.
Mm,
It
that's
was
hard.
kind of hard, yeah. And so, but we started doing a lot of machining at that same time.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how the shop was pretty much founded. And then we had a couple lucky breaks, I guess.
Tell
that
us about those.
so basically there was I was coming at it from like an engineering perspective. Like what I do is I solve problems, not so much machine parts.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting towards the end of my lease, so I was trying to be a little less risky, and so I only signed a 6 month lease. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, like worst case, like I'm 22, just call it quits. And at this point, I actually did get accepted to CU, so I'm a student as well at this time.
Okay. Got it.
And so I did another year and a half of schooling at CU while I was doing the shop.
Got it.
And so I thought, well, worst case, I'll just call it quits and be an academic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And a customer walked in, so I didn't know it at the time, but there were actually two machine shops next door to me. And basically, a customer had started at the first one, went to the second one, and then ended up at mine. And each one of those customers told them, like, we're not touching this project.
Okay.
And I was like, I'll touch it. And it
Okay.
was actually, and I can share this now. Have you ever seen the Ceramic Speed bike? They did a chainless bike, world's
Okay.
most expensive bike. Got a ton of publicity around this
I did
bicycle,
not see that.
and we did
Sounds
all the
cool though.
machining for it at the beginning there. And
Oh
basically,
wow.
I approached it. That's when I learned how to machine. Was essentially on that
On
project,
that
and they
job.
didn't know that at the
Wow.
time. They just
Okay.
I had a mill, so they were like, okay, he said yes, so we'll just see if anything happens, you know.
Right.
And
Wow. That's awesome.
that's how it kind of spiraled there. And I approached every project after that as, okay, we're happy to take on projects other shops don't want,
Mm-hmm.
which tend to be really hard in some way. And
Mm-hmm.
we are basically, I was committed to basically getting the project done, win, draw, or lose.
Right.
And so there was a lot of that in the first year, two
So
years.
each project was just a massive learning opportunity for you, really.
So much. Yeah. There were just so many small learning opportunities. I remember finding out about helicoils. My mind was blown, you know.
Sure.
All
Sure.
these things that you would take for granted if you even worked for a year in a shop, you know.
Right. Wow.
So
So basically, just to summarize, like 100% like educated on YouTube, just enough to
100%.
be
Yeah.
dangerous and be cocky that you can just buy a machine and jump into this.
I wasn't
And
trying. I like basically I had
but that's maybe not cocky, but bald, like just like
it,
the guts to do it, right?
it
Most people
kind
don't
of
do
is,
that.
but at the
Most people
same
don't
time,
do
my
that.
whole mentality was like, I'm gonna buy the things that I love. So like I also bought like high voltage power supplies and vacuum units to just because these are things that I was interested in and playing with
Uh huh.
on my own, you know?
I love
And
it.
so I kind of viewed this as that, like, I'm going to buy all these. And it was kind of low risk. Like you could do what I did with under $10,000, $15,000.
Right.
Um, and including like the lease, the machines,
Sure.
you can find stuff in that range. And so it's not like
Yeah.
I went out and bought a top of the line mill and was like, I'm just going for it. It
Sure.
was more like,
Sure.
here's a kind of a cool mill. Should I buy it and try to learn it? And it was, man, it was a mess. Like I was in that machine every other week, taking it apart, replacing parts. I had to convert it from a floppy disk to a USB emulator so I could put my Fusion code into it. And then
Oh
I,
wow.
at some point, had to learn how to run from, is it DNC?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that way you can have more
Yep.
memory.
Drip feed. Yep. Directly. Yeah.
And, so I learned a lot on that machine. I got a lot of crashes out of my system on that machine. And,
And
you
most of
know,
this learning was just like pulling up YouTube and just like seeing if you can find people's videos on this kind of stuff,
yeah, a lot of it
or
was, and I approached it as like as scientifically as I could. So I'd do something, I would take notes on what happened. I would make one change, take notes on what happened, and that I learned a lot like that. And it's such a huge learning curve because there's so much you need to learn to machine successfully, like speeds and feeds, tooling choices, fixturing, your actual tool paths. Like there's just this mountain of stuff, and it's so overwhelming. But I broke it down kind of, I'd make one change at a time, and so I'd be there all night to machine a block with holes in it.
Right.
And
Wow.
yeah,
I love that approach. Yeah, that changing one variable and just seeing what the effect is.
what changes? And now that's how our shop works. That's how everything works, and we try our best to document those things. That way we can save
Sure.
it and spread it across our shop.
Wow. Okay, so let's fast forward. So what year was that? Just for people's context, what year was this that you were
That was
starting this?
2018. That was like the summer of 2018, and so we're coming up on our 5th year in August. Well, this will be our
Okay,
5th year.
right. And so what does your shop look like today? Machines, people,
Shop
types
looks
of
like
work.
today we have 6 employees, including myself. We have
Hmm.
4 vertical mills, and a lathe with live tooling, sub
Hmm.
spindle, y-axis, all that. And then we have a 5-axis CMM, which we absolutely love. We are obsessed with that side of things.
Right.
And what we would say is we about 50% of our work is what we'd call high risk parts. The
Yep.
other 50% is probably what we would call low volume production,
Hmm.
meaning it's not like prototype, like just get me something, I want to see if this works.
Right.
But it's onesie twosies.
Right. Got it. Got it. And what are the industries you serve most? What type
We
of
do a lot of
parts?
aerospace, a lot of defense, a lot of medical automation,
Hmm.
and semiconductor. Those would be
And do you
the
specialize in any particular materials?
we not really. We basically try to tell our customers that we specialize in hard parts, and so we do a lot of about. So high risk for us means that the brick of material, like a 2-3 foot brick of titanium, 3 inches thick, that wouldn't scare us at all. Like we would bid on that project. And
Okay.
so we would bid on that project, stainless, titanium, Invar. We would absolutely tear into a piece of material that size.
Right.
Um, and then aluminum, of course.
Sure.
Yeah,
Wow. That those are you mentioned some hard materials there. Big
we
learning
love that.
curves.
It's just we love it.
Well, I would imagine tying it back to your comment from earlier, the only way you could get good at Invar and titanium is to change one variable at a time and see how
Yeah,
it goes because yeah, those things can be messy. And
they
if you're
can.
changing a
Yeah,
bunch
they
of things all
absolutely
at
can.
once,
And you have to be kind of scientific about it. And luckily, we've had the opportunity to try it on on a much smaller scale, and then that went well. So our customers put put us up to another challenge, and then it kind of grows into this scenario. We're taking on parts that are 2 or 3 weeks at a time.
right? Wow. And how have has just continued the work you're getting? Is it just continued to be just network, word of mouth, referrals from other people, or
It
are you
started
getting
off that way. At the very beginning, I made a website with the
okay?
intention of so I had a couple scenarios where people would come to my shop, and it was basically, I don't want to say it was embarrassing, but you could see like the look on their face of like, okay, this wasn't what we were looking for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a one-man shop, dirty
Sure.
machines, nothing newer than 30 years old. Um, and I could like see that look on their face. So I put a lot of time into the website thinking that like I need to kind of present myself as a shop that can take on these challenges.
Sure.
And luckily that kind of was a good investment. So we've actually at this point put a lot into our website, and it's grown a lot over the last 5 years. And
Mm-hmm.
so that would be our biggest source of new customers at the moment. But at the
So
beginning, it was a lot of, we got one engineer to like us, and then they went somewhere else, and
right.
that was the trend.
So with your website, are you just focused on sort of just organic SEO and just trying to make your website, you know, come up on search results, and so people aren't
Exactly.
Googling you
Yeah,
and
we're
finding
working
you?
on. We're we're a small shop really early on, so there's a budget to everything.
Sure.
People that want to do SEO for you, it's really expensive. So we're kind of
Yeah.
bootstrapping it and doing it ourselves. We paid to have the website built because I couldn't do that as well as someone else. But
Sure.
in terms of writing content, I'm trying to update content. My goal this year was once a month. I've kind of missed a month. So we're trying to
Hmm.
do blog posts.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, just trying to rank. And then the other part of that is really just trying to present a professional website. So that way, when someone comes across it, it's representative of our work.
Hmm.
We have to be able
Right.
to essentially show off what we can do before people get there. Not in terms of pictures of parts, but
Right. And
how
then
much we
tell
can.
us, so have you done the same thing with your actual shop itself? Like you've
Oh,
upgraded your
absolutely.
equipment and
Yeah.
share that journey, of sort of
Well,
upgrading from your first,
yeah.
mill turn thing
So,
to,
this must have been like 2019, and my lease. I think I signed it one more time for 6 months, and my lease was just about ready to end. And I remember having this conversation with myself, like, okay, do I want to do this? If so, I need a new machine because this other machine is just not working out.
hmm
Um, and decided that that's what I was going to do. So I sold my truck and took that as a down payment for a VF2,
hmm
and so then this thing shows up and it was so shiny. I was so proud of this machine, and we've tried to keep it that way. So I love when
Right.
our customers come through our new shop and they tell us how clean everything is. I absolutely love that because
hmm
that's what we try to do. Like we make an effort to polish everything, clean the tops, clean the windows, clean the
Yep.
controls, floors.
Yep.
Like we don't have nice white epoxy floors, but if we still get tons of compliments on how clean our shop is.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do on everything. Like every little chamfer, we reject parts for bad chamfers all the time. Like
Hmm.
everything needs to be perfect.
Right.
And so we've tried to do that with the shop, tried to do that with the website, tried to do that with every little thing we can.
Wow. And so, you now have, you said 4 machines or 5?
Yep.
Okay. And
So we have four, and then so this is like we're starting to approach COVID. Um,
yep.
I basically decided I need to get rid of the Miltronics.
Hmm.
And I need a machine in here right away. So there was a VF4 available. And so we got that, but that was all we could fit in the unit. Because this
So that
first
was
unit was
still
1,000
the
square
old
feet.
unit. Yeah.
Yeah. And so right after that, the landlord kind of came to us about 6, 7 months later, COVID
Hmm.
happened. And
Right.
one of the businesses in like their largest unit was not had to shut down, had to move
Right.
out, couldn't keep going. And they
Right.
basically said, hey, do you want to look at it? And I was really hesitant because at this point I'd signed a 2-year lease um,
Got it.
on the small unit. And so I was kind of looking at like, well, first of all, I have to sign a 5-year lease. It's 3 times the space, but it's not only that, it's a prime piece of
Hmm.
property that has a front door and a garage. So
Right.
it costs more. We kind of had to make this decision like, do we want to keep growing or do we want to stay here for 2 years where we can't fit another person in here, can't fit another machine,
Right.
or do we kind of take this risk and move next door? And so we ended up deciding to do that, built an
Hmm.
office space in there and moved into our new building in 2020.
Okay.
Poured a
Mid
bunch of
COVID.
concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mid COVID.
right in the middle of COVID. Yeah,
Okay.
right in
you,
the middle of COVID.
I love
But business was
just,
business was good for us at that point. Like we were not feeling the effects of COVID at too much at that point. So we had decided to get into ITAR work, and we had just got our ISO at that point.
mm, okay.
And so we were starting to get some more contracts that were a little bit more stable,
Hmm.
that weren't going to be super affected by COVID.
Can we talk about your ISO for a second?
Yeah,
How did you make that decision? Was it to open doors to companies that wouldn't talk to you otherwise, or?
it was. And then, so at this point, I know you've read this because I've heard you mention it, the E Myth. I've read the E Myth.
Mhm.
At this point, I probably read that book, and it felt like an easy way to pr- get procedures in place.
Right.
Um, and so that's
Yeah.
kind of what we did was we did ISO for business development to try to like have
Sure.
procedures in place. And it is so hard. At this point, we were a two-man shop, so I had hired my first employee. And
Hmm.
so to get ISO with two people it's a nightmare because you got to like audit each other and you got to have him audit you. And
Right. Yeah.
it's a
Wow.
brutal
That's amazing.
process.
With two people. Okay. You continue
Yeah.
to amaze me. All right. So you had ISO that did open the door. So you put that all over your website, I'm sure,
We did,
right?
but we didn't get that much work for it right away because at this point we would have sold ourselves into oblivion if we had started selling it too hard. So we put it out there, and then we didn't push it too hard because we were just so buried.
So you were really busy still at that
Yeah.
point. Right.
Hmm.
But did it ultimately open some doors and allow some clients to work with you that wouldn't otherwise?
I
Or were
think
they
it
going to work with
has.
you
It's hard
anyway?
to say. I think what ISO's done for us a lot is it sounds like some companies have these onboarding procedures,
Hmm.
and sometimes they let you skip the line if you're ISO. So instead
Right.
of having to go through like this trial process and come out of your shop and look at your stuff, they just
Right.
sign you up as a vendor.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
so. It's hard to say. We don't have any way to kind of verify that. I
Hmm.
would say it couldn't have hurt. It really helped our shop though. Like it helped turn our shop into a shop that cares about quality and delivery and the way we do things more than, and
Hmm.
that has definitely gotten us new customers.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. No, I'm, I'm glad you mentioned that. I definitely feel like, a lot of companies and even our own shop, we got ISO and then AS originally to, for business opportunities, but it does drive good business practices. If
Yeah,
you look at the statistics, companies that are ISO certified are more profitable than those that are not. And I don't know if there's causality or just, correlation there,
I
but
think there
I
has to
gotta,
be.
yeah, I gotta believe when you have more standardized processes, you will be more profitable because you're not making as many mistakes and you have
Yeah.
continuous improvement processes and all those things, right?
Or even just a leg to stand on, like, hey, I know this machine is calibrated and this was the result we got. How are you measuring this? That's
Sure.
a,
Yeah.
and we've had that happen when they come back and they're like, oh, well, actually it was, you know what I mean? It kind of gives that right there could save you a
Oh
ton of
yeah.
money. Like I remember when we had some gauges fail. I couldn't believe that gauges would fail. Brand new thread gauges
Mm,
would fail, and that's risky because then you're sending parts out, and who knows what could happen after that.
sure.
Um,
Wow, fascinating. Yeah. Well, very cool. So then, just to continue on the story, so you got your VF2, your VF4. Now, so are you leasing machines at this point? Are you buying them, or how? Or like,
so
just
we're doing. I don't know if leasing is the right word. We're basically putting a down payment and then making monthly payments. So we're
right.
financing them.
You're
We're not
financing,
paying
yeah,
for them in
with a
cash.
one, yeah,
Yeah.
with a
Um,
buyout at the end.
yeah. Exactly. Well, there's no like dollar buyout. They're doing it just like you would a car payment, pretty much. Where,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, which is an interesting conversation in itself. The whole financing topic, so after that we got the lathe.
Hmm.
And it wasn't supposed to be like this. My grand plan had a 5-axis in our shop much sooner. Like when I moved into this unit, I poured really big, expensive pads of concrete for a really big, expensive 5-axis.
Hmm.
But customer needs kind of this opportunity presented itself for a lathe.
Yep.
Basically, there's this part, and everyone that was bidding on this part was either too high and we kind of thought we might be able to make that if we had a lathe
Hmm.
with a sub spindle and a y-axis. And so we'll pose this question to our customer, like, "Hey, we'll bid on this, but we don't have a lathe.
Hmm.
Um, and if we get it, we'll buy a lathe within 4 weeks and have parts for you in 8 weeks." And that's what we did, and it helped us both out because now at the beginning I couldn't buy a lathe with just the hopes that work would come for it.
Right.
So this got me enough work to kind of be able to sell the fact that we have a lathe.
Right.
Um, and so that's how the lathe came to be. And then
Wow.
next was supposed to be a 5-axis, and
Okay.
then we ended up buying two more VF2s to this last year. Just we needed more spindles.
Right. Yep.
Um, and then we've had kind of a CMM debacle a little. We
Okay.
I tried to buy a really cheap used CMM, get it refurbished, and that didn't go
Hmm.
well. So I bought. Are you familiar with the Keyence optical probes?
Yeah.
So we bought one of those, and those just it wasn't quite accurate enough for our
Hmm.
needs.
Yep.
And so we sold that and now bought a Michitoyo with a PH10 and a
Hmm.
full scanning probe. So we're
Nice.
kind of set up in quality now, which we love.
So what were your lessons learned from that debacle? You said like don't try to skimp, or what? Like what?
No,
Yeah.
because they
What's
were
the
like in the
advice?
same price. I guess I thought so. The Keyence is so much easier to use. It really
Right.
is like running a CAD package. Like if you know how to
Hmm.
make a cube in a CAD package, you could use the CMM really well.
Hmm.
Um, but I've had a lot of these learning experiences just because I didn't know. Having never really been in, I've never worked in a machine shop,
Hmm.
so never really thinking about these things. I'm kind of left on my own to try to make my best decision, and
Right.
there have been plenty of times where it was just the wrong decision,
Right.
and that's pretty much
Got it.
the
Yeah.
nature of it, I guess. Yeah,
It's so funny. There's as you were just saying that, I flash back to some of our early years. I was 22, 23 when we started our shop, never having worked in a shop ever,
yeah,
right? Just a little bit of experience. YouTube wasn't really a thing back when I started my shop, but
yeah,
we learned just enough to be dangerous, in some of our school programs that. But yeah, having like totally in our own little bubble,
yeah,
not knowing other shop owners, never having worked in a shop, we're just figuring it all out as we went. Just like sounds like you've been doing for these last few
yeah.
years.
And so you're just bound to have a bunch of big, expensive learning experiences. You know?
But you learn from each one, you move
Yeah,
forward, get
yeah.
better. Yeah.
So we've had a lot of those.
Yeah. So um I met I imagine, as you I mean, growth, that's pretty fast growth, what you're doing. That's got to
Yeah,
be tight on cash flow,
yeah,
right?
man, that's been one of the hardest things. Yeah, um,
So
cash flow.
but you just obviously you're still here, so you've been just getting enough work to pay the bills, put the down payments on new machines, and just keep going. Turn on those spindles, start getting more revenue from those machines, and
Yeah, that has got to be one of the biggest. Obviously, growth eats cash, and
yes, for
I
sure.
remember. So we actually, in right before we moved, we started working with EGS,
Hmm.
and that's EBITDA Growth Systems. If anyone
Yep.
doesn't
So
know,
Dave and Mike,
but
yeah, good friends of ours, good partners of ours.
yeah, so they came in and one of the this is almost funny, but basically we were doing everything cash. Like we had no terms with anybody except for on our customer side. So we're
Right.
paying all material cash, all tooling cash, and then our customers were net 30, net
Right.
60.
Yeah.
And
If you're lucky, not 30.
yeah, well, so at that point we started working on terms and trying to actually think about things like cash flow
Hmm.
and but it's a when you're we've had a lot of growth and it is just the nature of the beast, I think.
Hmm.
Um, is yeah, we kind of get flow. I don't know what to say about it, but absolutely that's been a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it was for a shop. I know it is for pretty much every shop out there that doesn't
Yeah,
start with a whole whack of cash, just which is not the story for most shops. So
yeah, it's
yeah.
weird. It's so crazy how it you really just see the flow. Like I had never even heard the term cash flow before
Right.
doing all this, and it really is just it continues to blow my mind how you could go from five figures or something down to like the low five, and it just
Right.
back and forth
Yeah, just in a matter of days or
and you
weeks.
really don't have that much control about it unless you find a way to extend your terms on your vendor side or get better terms on your customer side or just
Hmm.
so what we're trying to do is we're really trying to we tend to take really large scope projects over like 4, 6, 8 weeks.
Hmm.
that's that's so brutal.
Do you ever ask for down payments or
We
progress
don't.
payments?
We don't. And so, but to do what we have asked is, can we do partial deliveries so we can deliver
Right.
more than just once every 8 weeks, or something like that on a
Mm-hmm.
big project? Because that is just another.
Right.
variable to this cash flow.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I might encourage you. I know we did this from time to time. If you have a good relationship with that client,
Yeah,
you're like, we're going to do this project for you, but we got to spend 20 grand out of pocket on materials up front.
yeah,
So can we
we
get a
have done
deposit?
that.
Yeah.
We have done it when there's a large material investment.
Right.
We did a
That's good.
yeah,
Yeah. That can make, make or break a project, just your ability
yeah.
to deliver. Yeah. Um, so, what, I'm curious to know what is the culture in your shop? I,
The culture in
yeah.
our shop is something I wish I had thought about a lot sooner.
Okay.
Um, we've started looking at it this last year, and we're trying to make it a huge priority. I think that's one of the things I could have done better at early on. And in the very beginning, it was just me, and then as people started coming along, I don't think I did a great job at building a great culture because I maybe was a little just grumpy all the time from working all the time. And I think that didn't help at all,
Sure.
just to be honest about it. But we're making a huge priority on that. So we're trying to get everybody together as a team once, twice, 3 times a week, talk about
Hmm.
things and make sure everyone knows this is a team effort. And
Yeah.
it's not just everyone off working in their own department. And
Sure.
so we're focusing on that a lot.
So besides those meetings, what other things are you doing? Are you like defining core values? Are you doing
We're starting
mission
to
vision
work on core
statements?
values.
Hmm.
We haven't decided anything in stone yet,
Yeah.
but we have been trying to look at that more in the hiring process. Just like, are they going to be a good fit with me and Tanner?
Sure.
And so what we've gotten to so far is willingness, open mindedness, and teamwork. Um,
Yeah.
and
Those are good
that's where
ones.
we're at so far.
Right.
We haven't published it yet. So we're
Sure.
working on it. We haven't gotten that.
Are the EGS guys kind of helping you through that process, or
Oh, they
is this more a
absolutely
side
are.
project? Yeah.
Yeah, they are. And so at the very beginning there, we were probably too small to be engaging with them.
I was just gonna say, I'm surprised and impressed that you would make that choice. I mean, it's very forward thinking of you, I think.
I don't know if it was. I read that book, The E Myth, and I just was almost crushed. Like I remember just being like, that is me. I am the perfect technician. The bigger the mountain of stuff
Hmm.
to do, the happier I am. How have I not thought at all about the business? And then Mike and Dave come in, and I'm like, sounds like a plan.
Right.
But we were just a little too small to actually do anything. That they had great ideas and kind of got me thinking about this idea of working on the business instead of in the business.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was me and one other person. It's like
Hmm.
we couldn't track
Sure.
time. We couldn't do all these things
Right.
um, that they were suggesting because we didn't have the resources. So
Right.
we've re-engaged them basically in the last month, knowing that we now can put into action these ideas that they have.
Right.
So yeah, they absolutely are helping with stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's I, I appreciate the candor that you're bringing to this conversation, and clearly the humility. Like, when I ask about culture, and you're like, "Yeah, I didn't do a great job at that." You know.
It wasn't a thought
Um,
like my whole, and it sucks because I think maybe so at the very beginning there, I worked. You could probably count on one hand the number of days I took off in the first 2 years. I slept there. I had a bed above my office. I
hmm.
was there 15 hours. I was just there all the time. It's hard
Yeah.
not to kind of be to take every little thing personal, and so I'm trying to start working my way out of that. So that way I can be a good team leader instead of just like this kind of douchey boss. That's not what I'm trying to be. I want to be a good leader, not
Sure.
but coming from that, it's hard to maybe see other people's perspectives. It's hard to see
Right.
stuff like that.
Wow. No, again, appreciate the candor, and I know people listening and watching this will really value that as well. It's because
It's a huge priority for us at the moment.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as we were talking about before we hit record, right? I think we're at this very unique moment in time where there's so many shops that were started by baby boomers, or they took over their family business or whatever, that are all hitting the retirement age and deciding what to do, and
Yeah.
oftentimes closing their shops or selling off the assets, maybe selling it, but a lot of shops can't sell because they're not worth, selling. Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of younger folks like yourself that are getting excited about manufacturing, learning about it on YouTube or wherever, and just jumping in with both feet. Um, but it's such a steep learning curve, and being humble about the fact that you and candid about, I'm just learning as I go. Where would I have learned all these lessons before?
Yeah.
Because I never worked in a shop. Um, it's yeah, it's refreshing to just kind of hear your perspective on it. So I know tons
Well,
of
I
folks will get
appreciate
a
that.
lot of value from this. Um, what now that you're, um, you know, almost 5 years in, sort of what are some of the best decisions that you think you might have made along the way that helped you get to where you are right now?
There were a ton. Oh my gosh. And then some of them were just like lucky, like there was this path or that path, and I happened to pick the best one. Like moving into our new unit, that was critical. It gave us the
Hmm.
space to grow into, kind of like a fish, and grow into the
Yeah,
size of their tank or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
That was a big one. ISO was huge because it laid the framework. We're actually our surveillance audit, our third. So we had our stage one, stage two, second surveillance. Yeah, this would be our second surveillance audit this year. And so
Okay,
this year in July, we're actually going to do AS instead of just the ISO. So
cool.
I think that'll be huge for us.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then I would say kind of doubling down on technology has been a big thing for us.
Hmm.
We did sign up with Pro Shop, and it's been huge for us. So I am literally the best technician ever and don't want to mess with any admin things. All I want to do is run a machine, and then I'll kind of just get the admin stuff done. And it creates a whirlwind of chasing our tail a little bit. And so, having a good
Right,
ERP in place that we can kind of spread out what needs to be done, that's
right.
huge. That's been huge for us.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
there's just a lot of these kind of small little things that have added up.
sure. Um, let me just grab my question list here. So, what are the metrics that you track at your shop? You clearly seem like you have a very sort of scientifically minded approach to things. So you must, and obviously for ISO, you have to track metrics.
Sure. Yeah, we,
What's
we
important
track
to
on
you?
time delivery, scrap rate. We're starting to work on time tracking. That's kind
Okay.
of in a shop that does one or two pieces. We've been having a hard time kind of because sometimes you're working on a couple things at once. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
separating what you're working on has kind of been a
Mm-hmm.
challenge there for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And of course, profitability and how much we're spending on material to a job. That's something we never could do before our
Sure.
ERP, and so that has been it's so crazy how easy that is. But EGS would have recommended we do that, but we just couldn't have put the time in um,
Of course. Yeah. Wearing
up
too
front,
many
and so
hats.
now we're
Yeah.
kind of tracking that and getting a lot of insight into how our shop
And
actually functions.
how is that helping your decision making about jobs, about clients, about projects, materials, whatever?
What it's shown us, like one big thing that we've noticed is we can, in most cases, afford to buy two pieces of material, and
Mm-hmm.
this whole time we've just been buying one. So
Mm-hmm.
here's a big brick of aluminum. You've got one shot. We've found it's cheaper to have the other shot available and then just have the material on the shelf than have
Right.
this downtime associated with getting more material when a mistake inevitably happens.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's been huge for us.
Yeah. For sure. Has it has it revealed to you certain, and maybe you're still not quite far enough along to really have the detailed nuance pictures, but like which clients are, profitable, or which types of jobs or materials, or has it steered like, the industries you pursue or the types of jobs you pursue?
It hasn't yet. Maybe
Okay.
we're not yet. We
Hmm.
do. So we have decided to make a bit of a switch this year. So we're trying to focus on diversifying the type of work we do.
Yeah.
Um, because what we do right now is not conducive to hiring, really.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so we're trying to get some level of production into our shop so we can have a path to becoming a machinist that works on these parts instead of just
Right.
having to hire and kind of take a chance on somebody who says they're a really good machinist. We want to have that kind of path in our shop.
Hmm.
So we have kind of noticed that, but not necessarily. No, we haven't gone that far into it yet.
Yeah, it's a journey, so it takes a while. Um, I'm curious to know because especially since we had such a similar path at the beginning of our shop. Are you transparent with your employees about the cost of jobs? What you're charged for, those kinds of things.
We're starting to be a lot more.
Okay.
At the very beginning, I had a couple instances when it was like just me and one other person. I
Mm-hmm.
tried to be a little bit more transparent about things, and it just
Mm-hmm.
didn't end well. And
Mm.
maybe I didn't frame it in the right way, but the kind of inevitable conversation kind of happened like, oh, you're billing this much an hour and you're paying me this much an hour.
Mm-hmm.
What? So why
Right.
don't we even that out a bit? And
Oh, jeez.
you know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
Which
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not that we don't want to pay our employees really good. It's just we're paying the rent and the material that almost always gets overlooked. But now
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of gotten to a size where that's appreciated more. Like it's more obvious that, okay, all these machines are here, they're getting paid for somehow. The building we're in is getting paid for. The material just shows up when we need it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
there's all these things that kind of don't need to be said that had to be really spelled out when I first started.
Mm.
So we're starting to be more transparent. We're not to the point yet where we're sharing really intricate details of like our
Right.
P&L or anything like that. But
Sure. Sure. Have you? Do you feel like that there's more buy-in from people when they know, like, this material, this chunk of material costs $5,000, or whatever, right? Just
I'm not sure. I think
okay.
one thing that is so we have a tooling system, like
Hmm.
a vending
Yep.
cabinet, and that lists the price of the tool, which I really like. So when they
Okay.
go and check out a tool, they know how much it costs, and I think that helps. I think it kind of makes people appreciate, like, okay, there's $100 end mill. You're about to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
it'd be really nice if it could go back in the cabinet.
Sure. Not
um,
break it. Yeah.
and so that I think is so I do think it's how it helps a little bit. I do think people appreciate that, and
Hmm.
so we're trying to, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, ultimately, we made the call to share sort of P&L, not every detail, of course, but we had a monthly meeting, and we'd be like, this month we made 20 grand, and the next month we lost 15, or whatever it is, and like
and
we
was that
even,
received well?
I think, yeah, I mean, people appreciated the transparency, and um, really, and we'd go into like, these are some jobs that went really well this month, and we'd even have the employees talk about, what went so well. Like this one, we did a great job quoting it, or we came up with a new fixturing method, and they, instead of an hour of machining, we figured out how to make it in 34 minutes, right?
Nice.
And celebrate those wins. And we'd do the opposite as well. It's like, we lost our shorts on this job,
Yeah.
right? And here's what we learned. We learned that we're terrible at titanium, or this thing had a flatness of 2 thou across 24 inches. And we just didn't know about how to make parts flat, or whatever. And we always brought it back to process. Like, we're going to change the way we quote jobs like this, or, we are going to invest in some vacuum fixtures, or whatever it
Sure.
is. And like, we never beat up the employees that were
Of
involved in
course.
a job that
Yeah.
wasn't successful. We always came back to process, right?
Right.
And I do think, and we also implemented profit sharing, so people, very much were sort of aligned
Invested.
with, all right, we're all in this together to try to make this venture as profitable as possible.
Sure.
Um, and knowing, yeah, that the end mill is $100, you don't want to just crash it. Be a
Yeah.
little more
Just go get
cautious, or
another one.
this,
There's always an
or
end
this,
mill in there, you know?
yeah, it's yeah, just unlimited end mills that are no cost.
Yeah.
Um, or this material is $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So we really got to be cautious about about watching our distance to goes and making sure we're not going to bury
Sure.
this $100 end mill into this thousand
I
dollar piece
think
of
people are
material.
starting to see that at our shop a little bit because what we have, we basically have the way we're treating heats and stuff like that
Hmm.
is the machinist can go pull up the PO and add the work order to that PO. So
Yep.
they are now kind of seeing how much that piece of material costs.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's just something that was found in a bin or something that we specifically ordered for it,
Right.
it's readily available there, just like it is for the end mill.
Right.
And so I do think that is probably a good insight to have.
Yeah.
Maybe we should dig a little
Yeah.
deeper.
And when you hire the right, if you hire people that like that care, right, that genuinely care about
Sure.
the success of the company, and the fact that you personally have sacrificed so much and put so many tens of thousands of hours into making this venture go, and can respect that they want to help contribute to that,
Yeah. Especially if you have a good culture and the guy who did that's not salty.
right? How do you we're getting close, we need to start wrapping up here soon, but
Sure.
how do you go about finding employees, recruiting, making sure you're finding the right people, good fit, all those kind of things?
So we are doing just job ads. I think what we're going to
Okay.
try to start doing is maybe start. Um, well, we're trying two new things. So we've kind of gotten involved with the local community college. Tanner and I have been going down, and we are on the advisory board, and so we've been talking with
Oh, good for
the
you.
guy who runs that. He kind of sends some people our way,
Hmm.
and then we're going to take kind of the same perspective we do with the website in terms of getting customers to finding employees,
Hmm.
and trying to sell why working at Preece is a good opportunity. Um, Instead of because kind of posting an ad seems to be kind of passive,
Hmm.
especially the
Sure.
last couple of years with the current kind of job market's been a
Yeah.
little tough. At least that's our impression of it. Is it's been kind of
Oh,
hard to find people.
everyone's impression, believe me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been it was
Well,
so crazy
I love that
pre-COVID.
shift. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that shift in thinking that you need to sell your company to prospective employees just like you sell your services to prospective clients. I mean, that
yeah,
is
we
so
need to
key.
be because we have a lot to offer here. You could come work here and have a huge say on how things are happening at our shop,
Hmm.
and I think some people find that pretty attractive. Um,
Oh, absolutely. Especially the people that are the type of people that you probably want to attract, that
yeah,
care, that want to help steer it in the right direction, and not just be a, punch in, punch out for a paycheck, right? You want
right,
people
yeah,
engaged.
yeah. Well, and I think there's a this perfect person could also be like that too. You know what I mean? Like if they show up and every second they're there, we totally. I respect a lot people willing to kind of say I'm not willing to just make this my whole life just because you have it my
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah,
doesn't mean it's my gig.
of course.
um, and so yeah, we're working on that. We hired we're adding another team member. They start I think in a couple weeks. And then we just hired another guy this last few months who's been starting on the weekend, and we're kind of trying to groom him to be
Mm-hmm.
running the weekend for us.
Okay.
Um,
So you're
so,
running multiple shifts now.
well, I don't know if I'd
You're
call it that
starting
because we have
to.
one guy on the weekend and me and Tanner on the weekend.
Sure.
We run 7 days a week, but it's not a full
Yeah.
shift yet.
Yeah, yeah. But you got it, baby steps, right? You got to
Yeah,
start
we're
even.
inching
Yeah,
towards it.
that's awesome. So what would you share as sort of your best advice to someone that's even younger in their journey than you are, starting out a shop?
I saw this question and I was trying to think of how I'd answer it because I looking back, I think it'd be easy to say like, oh my gosh, one of the best things I could have ever done would be to just buy one of these shops you're talking about.
Hmm.
But that's not feasible, right?
Sure.
If because where I was at, I didn't have any money and I certainly wasn't going to be able to risk it all on a shop. And so I guess the way I'd answer this is find a way to be just super passionate about what you're doing and to have that passion get shown in your work. I think that's what makes the difference between at least shops we're willing to work with. We outsource a lot of stuff, and we can tell pretty much on the first project if they're going to be a good fit for us.
Mm-hmm.
We care a lot about cosmetics.
Yep.
Obviously we're not making jewelry and we're trying to make money, but
Sure.
we care a lot about cosmetics, and I think little things like that speak to kind of what you
Hmm.
do
Yeah.
and what your shop does.
Yeah. And you even, maybe to tie that back to, you mentioned that, when you got ISO and started caring about quality, that has led to more customers, probably because of they're going to be a reference for you, or they move companies and they want to do work with you at the new company because you were such a great vendor and
Yeah.
beautiful parts, good quality.
Yeah. Oh, quality and on time delivery are just kind of like a given. You kind of have to be there, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
ISO, so it's kind of interesting. We actually loosened up a little bit after ISO, um,
Hmm.
because so coming from where I started from, I had no idea what was acceptable as a part.
Sure.
And so my only thought was it needs to be this shiny, like, and basically I was getting like 16 finishes on every surface, no scratches, like not a single little blemish of a scratch.
Right.
Everything needs, I'd see plus or minus 5 on there, but I'd think like, is it really plus or minus 5? Like it basically needs to be nominal. And that's kind of,
Jeez. Yeah.
but because I didn't know, I'd never worked in a shop where it's like, hey,
Got it.
it's in,
Yeah.
they put it
Right.
on there, and
Right.
there's a reason
Yeah.
for that. There's a reason they put
Sure.
it on there. And not to say that we've loosened up, but we kind of were able to work within our procedures and build parts to print,
Right.
and then offer really a better service because we're not spending our time remaking a part 3 times, and it was in spec the first time. It just, you know,
Wow. Yeah. I mean, but I mean, it shows the passion you have and the care that you are bringing to the trade and to the service you're providing your customers. And I know that's got to been one of the secrets to your success.
I think it has. Yeah, I think I don't know if it's lucky or not, but set ourselves into kind of a little bit of a niche, which
Hmm.
is, we don't just take every project. That has definitely been
Right.
a bit to our success, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Nick, well, this has been a blast. Again,
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope I was
just,
helpful.
oh yeah, no, undoubtedly. I mean, just the approach you bring, your passion, your humility for learning as you go, just your willingness to just jump in. We need thousands of more shop owners just like you because there's in addition to that moment in time where lots of shops are sort of retiring or moving on, there's such strong demand in North America, right? There's
It's
so much
huge. Yeah,
onshoring. There's just almost unlimitless opportunities. So,
absolutely. If
yeah.
you can
So
deliver
kudos to
something
you.
consistent, you just need to find who's going to buy that thing.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, kudos to you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thanks for
well,
sharing your
thank you
story
so
with
much. I
us.
really am
Yeah.
stoked. So, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if people want to find out more about you, where should they reach out?
Yeah, you can get through our website. It's machineandassembly.com. That's all spelled out. My email's nick@machineandassembly.com.
Hmm.
LinkedIn, shoot me an email,
Okay. I'll
any of
make
the
sure all
above.
those links are in the show
Yeah.
notes so they can
Thank you
click on
so
those.
much.
All right, Nick. Great talking to you. Great catching up. And we'll talk to you again before too long.
Right on. Thank you so much,
All right.
Paul.
Yep. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Hey everyone, this is Paul again. So hopefully, well, I'm pretty sure you will have enjoyed that conversation. It was just such a neat one with Nick. I admire his perseverance, his grit, his just can-do attitude. Again, his humility. It was just a really cool conversation. And as we talked about, and I think as hopefully all of you recognize, it is so important that we have hundreds and thousands of more people just like Nick that want to get into this business, that want to start a shop, that have the guts and the gumption to do so. So if you know people like this in your network, please encourage them, please support them, be a resource for them, reach out and provide support. It's just so important at this point in history that we have kind of all hands on deck to raise our industry to the level that we need to fulfill all the demand coming to the industry, to North America. It's just so important. So as always, thank you so much for listening and or watching wherever you're consuming this content. If you have enjoyed this or any of the other episodes, please consider leaving us a review, a comment on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever it might be.